Break Fix Podcast is all about capturing the living history of people from all over the autosphere, from wrench turners and racers to artists, authors, designers, and everything in between. Our goal is to inspire a new generation of petrol heads that wonder, how did they get that job or become that person? The road to success is paved by all of us because everyone has a story.
On Break Fix, we're always trying to bring you closer to the legends of motorsport. And today's guest is a true icon, known for his fearless driving and unmistakable presence on and off the track. We're talking about none other than pro driver Boris Said. With a career spanning decades, Boris has raced and won in just about every discipline you can think of, from sports cars and touring cars to NASCAR and endurance racing. He's a Daytona 24 Hours champion, a Trans Am winner, and one of the most respected road course specialists in American racing history.
Boris, whether it's your aggressive style, your versatile talent, or that signature head of hair under the helmet, which has receded somewhat since the early days of your career. It was very impressive. You've carved out a legacy that's as bold as it is inspiring.
And joining me tonight is Mike Carr, our resident sports car and endurance racing guru, and we're delighted to have him back in the studio with us tonight. So welcome back, Mike.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
And with that, let's welcome Boris to Break Fix.
How you doing? It's good to be here.
Well, Boris, like all good superhero stories, there's an origin. So let's talk about how you got your start in the world of motorsports and what drew you in all those years ago. And how did your early experiences shape the kind of driver you became?
Well, I didn't really take the traditional route. I owned a motorcycle dealership when I was 21. I was one of the youngest Honda dealers ever. The guy that helped me get that dealership was a guy named John McLean. He owned a Ford dealership. And what happened was I bought the dealership, but I couldn't get approved for financing for the credit line. And he was a big fan because the motorcycle shop I worked at before, he was like a race dad. And we were all in the motocross, and I helped his kid and him. And so he became a fake partner. And for doing that, I gave him a couple free dirt bikes back then in 1985. One day he goes, "Hey, I have this free trip to the Detroit Grand Prix. It's a Ford trip. It's all first class, hotel." I go, "What is it?" He goes, "It's an F1 race." I go, car racing's stupid. I don't need to go to that. I just never watched it, never knew much about it. I ended up going, and I didn't want to go. But as soon as I walked out on the roof in Detroit and I saw Ayrton Senna go by in this black Lotus, I was like instantly like, I got to get a Formula One car. That's the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. So, one thing led to another. I met a guy named Bob Sharp who had a business up the street from where my dealership was. And I ran into him in the paddock, and he said, "Hey, what are you doing here? I didn't know you were in the race." I go, "No, it's my first race ever." He goes, "Oh, you like it?" I go, "I want it. I want to get a Formula One car. Where do I get one? How much are they?" The stupidest question in the world looking back, right? But he took the time to sit me down and explain, like, hey, you got to go to the Skip Barber Racing School, and then you get yourself a showroom stock car, and you race some SCCA. And at the end of the conversation, I was like, "But how much is a Formula One car?" Because that's all I could think about. But I did exactly that. I went to the Skip Barber Racing School and then bought a showroom stock car. And originally, I was only going to race cars for a year, then go back to the motorcycle business. This is year 39 right now. So it was a crazy ride, but I loved every minute of it.
You didn't ask your dad how to get into an F1 car?
No, my dad, I didn't really know he raced. He left home when I was 6. I had the typical single mom living with our grandparents, not a whole lot of parental supervision. I was pretty much on the career path to jail as a kid. I got in a lot of trouble, but as a kid, when you're 12, 13, 14 years old, it's just fun, but I didn't know any better. And then when I was 14, I got a job in a motorcycle shop for like these bullies. These guys were rough guys, ex-roofers, and they straightened my life out. They just made me work and work and work and work. So I didn't know much about my father until I went to, the first few races when I started racing. People would say, "Oh, you're Bob Said's kid. Your dad raced." And I never knew he raced the first NASCAR race at the Daytona 500, the first Formula One race at Sebring. I had no idea. One time I was lucky enough to race for the Wood brothers, Eddie and Lenny. They're great, great guys. First race at Daytona on the asphalt, he gave me the result sheet. My dad, he finished last, but he was in the race. So I learned more about my dad when I started racing than I ever knew about him.
Wow.
So I guess you could say it's in your genes, because I didn't know he did it, but that's all I think about. Even after 39 years, it's still, I eat, sleep, live, and love racing.
It's interesting you say that, Boris, because you have one of the most unique but simple last names in racing. Have you ever traced back your genealogy? Are you somehow related to like Tazio Nuvolari and we don't know it?
No, man. I look back, my grandfather immigrated. He was an officer in the Tsar's army. When the Bolshevik Revolution, he immigrated and went through Ellis Island. That's all. I had never met him. My wife went and did all that. She went down the rabbit hole and all that stuff. I always thought the name was Said. That's how it's pronounced. I thought, a Middle Eastern, and they must have immigrated to Russia. But, one time I was in a Thai restaurant and the guy asked me, he goes, Said? He goes, oh, yeah, I think they went from probably Syria to Russia. No, impossible. He goes, you look like a Jew. And so we started thinking they probably chopped the name at Ellis Island, and I did the genealogy thing, and sure enough, I'm, 30% Jewish. So he was right, this professor. I've always said my whole life, I'm just a mutt. I never really cared about that stuff. I was just always looking forward and always looking to work hard, have fun. And once I found racing, that was my passion. I've turned that into a career, and pretty much my whole life is based around racing now. Currently I'm a partner with Rick Hendrick, which if somebody would have told me that 20 years ago, I would have told them they were crazy. And we've been partners in a car dealership for 14 years, and it's been quite the ride.
Talking about it being in your blood, your dad, Bob, his name was actually Boris as well. And your son is Boris.
Right.
But you're racing with your son now.
Yeah, I'm actually Boris Said the third. But when my son was born, in the hospital, I just said Junior because I was good friends with Dale Jr. and I like the name Junior. And I thought Boris Said the fourth sounds kind of like I didn't want him to get made fun of at school. I didn't even want to name him Boris. I used to tell people I was going to name him Simon, and they would just walk away laughing. Simon Said.
That's great. My last name's Carr, and I threatened to name my kid Bumper or something stupid like that. But
we couldn't think of a name other than Boris, so we just said, let's call him Junior, because I didn't know the first two anyway, really. Growing up, he didn't want anything to do with racing. I took him all over the world, and that wasn't his thing, and I'm like, that's fine. And it wasn't until like 5 years ago, he said, hey, I want to try a go-kart. We went go-karting, and I didn't really like the go-kart scene too much. It was pretty different than the road racing scene. So we bought a Miata, and we went Miata racing in SCCA, and that was great. And then, one thing led to another, and now he's racing a Trans Am car. So we're having a lot of fun going around the country doing that together.
Getting back to the beginning, what did you first get into?
So I bought a showroom stock Mustang and drove it to the racetrack and duct taped my numbers on there. I remember the first race was at driver's school at Pocono, Pennsylvania. And then I was going to do the race. It was a double regional right after that. And I did that on the tires I bought the car on. And I met BF Goodrich, and they were motorcycle guys. So they gave me tires my first weekend, just because we became friends. Literally, that just started it. And I just started going to the races. And I did some crazy things the first year. I started really late, and I might have wrote in a lot of fake races in my logbook so I could get a pro license to do a 6-hour race. And I did a 6-hour pro race at Atlanta Escort Endurance Series. I even came up with a fake co-driver because I'm like, I'm just going to run the whole 6 hours myself. I'm not going to let anybody drive my car. Literally got out and fueled it myself, swapped the tires from left to right myself, and did the whole 6 hours. It was really neat. It was fun. And then the last race of the year was at Sebring, and now I'm getting smarter. So I rented a car from Hertz, a Mustang. So I had spare parts, spare wheels, spare everything. For $70 a day, it was the best deal ever. So that was my first year racing.
That's amazing.
I think it's the first time I've ever heard that somebody's got a backup car that came from a rental agency. That's awesome.
So during the weekend at Sebring, it went through a fuel pump, so it was on jack stands and didn't run. And then in the race, I had brought two guys with me to fuel. And when I pulled in, I would get out with a T-handle and start changing the tires while they were fueling. And when I get half of that done, I'd get back in. I didn't really care how I finished. I just wanted to do the whole 6 hours. I had another fake co-driver on there. And near the end of the race, I think I was coming in for my last stop. And as I pulled in, all these guys jumped over the wall with air guns, and they start changing the tires. And they were all the Saline Racing guys from the Saline 4 team. My guy comes over. I go, hey, what the hell's going on? He goes, well, they need you to finish in the top 10 to win manufacturers right where you are. If you finish where you are, Ford can win the manufacturers. If not, Porsche is going to win. But they don't want to get disqualified, so they want to put this guy in, George Fulmer. And I didn't know who he was.
We've heard of him. Yeah.
I didn't know anything about racing. And he's on the pit wall ready to jump over the wall and me get out. And I just tell him, I told him, hey, thanks for the tires, but I'm driving my own car the last hour. I've already driven 5 hours, right? Gone through this whole thing. And so, yeah. And they ended up not disqualifying me because Porsche thought it was so funny. I did the whole 6 hours, and they were laughing at me for changing the tires with a T-handle and the whole bit. And at the end of the weekend when we left, I had to call Hertz and say, hey, your car won't start. It's in the parking lot. So, yeah. And that was my first year racing. That was 1987. Then in 88, I sold my motorcycle dealership and I said, I'm going to go racing. And I bought a Corvette Challenge car. I did the Pro Series Corvette Challenge. And, I was a one-man band in my van and open trailer and drove around the country and had the best time of my life.
So you would have raced against some other folks that we had on the show. I'm just going to throw some names out there. Andy Pilgrim, David Murray, Johnny O'Connell. You all are from the same graduating class, right?
Yeah. Andy Pilgrim was one of the first guys I ended up meeting in the Corvette Challenge. He was with a privateer team. These guys, Al Bear from Texas. After the Corvette Challenge, I ended up racing their Mustang a lot, over the years. Andy and I were, after 88, we're great friends, and we ended up racing on the same Camaro team for mainline racing a lot of years, and we've raced in BMW over the years, so we've raced a lot together. Actually, all those names we've raced, yeah. Yeah, Andy is an awesome driver, right, and a great guy, but he's also disgusting, and I'm going to tell you why.
This ought to be good.
So we were teammates, and he's very English, sounds very English, and I'm like, "What are you eating?" He goes, "A dripping sandwich." I'm like, "What the hell is a dripping sandwich?" He goes, "Oh, my mom made them when I was little. I still love them." They take the bacon grease, and they pour it into a can, that white grease,
Yeah.
and he puts it on white bread and then adds salt. And that's their idea of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Dripping sandwich. I'm like, Andy, I'm going to remember that for the rest of my life. And that was probably 30 years ago he told me that. And I still, when I hear Andy Pilgrim, I think dripping sandwich.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
But Andy's a wheel man and a really good guy and always has been.
Where I got plugged into Boris was through my dad, and he's like, "You got to come watch this guy," because he was watching World Challenge. He had been following your career since the early days and stuff like that. And so for me, seeing you on TV and the Mustangs and the BMWs, then competing against the Audis in World Challenge with Mike Galati behind the wheel, the S4, stuff like that, it got my spidey sense tingling. So I wanted to know, was this the second coming like it was in Trans Am and the old GTO days, where Audi, quote unquote, the unfair advantage? What was it like racing against the four-wheel drive cars with a classic rear-wheel drive setup?
They were better. They had an advantage, but I didn't care what I raced. I just wanted to race. And I always wanted to race the next fastest car. What's the fastest car I can get in? I'm in a showroom stock Mustang. Now I'm in a showroom stock Corvette. Now I'm in a World Challenge Corvette. And I was always just trying to get to the next fastest car. I want to get in a cup car. I want to race against Dale Earnhardt Sr., right? And then when you're racing World Challenge, that seemed like every time I got somewhere, it was like, this is the pinnacle. This is unbelievable. I'm getting a paycheck to drive these cars. And there were always guys along the way, like Mike Galati is a hardcore racer. Doesn't look like it. He looks like he should have a pizza restaurant. And the way he talks, he's a great, great guy. And he was deadly in those cars. He was a really good front wheel drive guy and really good in the 4-wheel drive cars.
I bring this up because it's a constant conversation nowadays, as I'm sure it was back then, which is BOP, balance of performance. Do you think it was right to keep adding weight to the Audis and penalize them? Or should Ford or BMW, whoever, built a better mousetrap? That's the argument against BOP, because that has perpetuated your entire career.
But especially now in the GT3 series, it's whatever car is whatever the BOP gives it that weekend. And I just always thought, you know what? I don't give a crap about that. I can't control that. So why worry about something I can't control? I see that it's not right for, one car to win every race. It's not going to look good. The other manufacturers will leave. And those are the guys paying you. It's a tough job for the sanctioning body to try to get every manufacturer to win. That's what they want. So everybody's happy. But are you equalizing drivers or equalizing cars? That's the big argument, really. The Audi that Mike Galati drove was a well-funded team backed by Audi, which was a lot for World Challenge at the time. And so I think if they were in two-wheel drive, they'd probably still be just as competitive because of all the engineering and everything they had behind it, and they had the really good drivers. But, I never really bitched about stuff like that. It didn't really see the point. I just drive harder. You got to figure out a way to beat them. Always going to be a weakness, no matter how good their car is the way I always thought in my head.
I started racing in an Audi, and, we always just prayed for rain. But let's talk about road courses. You've had good success at Sonoma, Daytona, Sebring, Watkins Glen, Bathurst. I want to hear about Bathurst and the Nürburgring. Obviously, the Nürburgring was a high point.
Yeah, Nürburgring to me it's the best piece of road in the world. I remember we went over there. I forget what year we did an IMSA race on the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit. And I was a teammate with Hans Stuck, so he was taking me around the old track, and it was just like, are you kidding me? A track that 3 times a lap, all 4 wheels are off the ground. It is the craziest piece of road in the world. And so I was addicted to it, and I wanted to do it so bad. So I kept bugging BMW to get me a Nürburgring, and they kept saying, no, an American can't learn it. No, it's too hard. No, it's not an American thing. And Hans, he talked him in to let me do it. They flew me over there. This is one of the most fun days I ever had. They gave me 2 BMW M3 CSL lightweights, street cars. And it was just open days with the public. And they go, okay, those cars are yours for 2 days.
Old cars?
Both cars, because I would go out in one with Hans, and we'd run 10 laps, fuel it up, go out and run another 10 laps, bring it back, and they'd change the tires and brakes, and I'd take the other one and burn that up for a couple hours. And I just kept rotating them.
What a joy.
It was the most fun I've ever had in 2 days. And that was in a street car. So then going back in the race car, it was just unbelievable. We did a lot of VLN races and one short, they were giving us 3-hour races to get ready for the 24-hour. But the first 24-hour race, which was a big deal for BMW, it was first time back there as a factory effort. On the pace lap, both cars broke down.
Oh.
They packed the radiators with dry ice so they wouldn't overheat on the 30-minute pace lap. The Russell line fittings froze and cracked, so they both lost trannies on the first lap. So we were way behind that first year. I had a lot of speed, but I crashed the car at like 3 a.m, going by a slow car down in the foxhole. He didn't see me, turned in and clipped me in the right rear, and I dumpstered the thing. I remember going back to the hotel, telling my wife, and just like, oh man, I just screwed the pooch. There's no way they're ever going to invite me back. I'm bummed. That was a low point in racing, but they invited me back. And then next year we finished 1-2. I was second, and in 2005 I became the first American to ever win that race. And
Congratulations.
probably one of the highlights of my racing career was it was one of the most fun cars. It's the hardest race in the world by far. I mean, you're lapping cars every 3 laps, the difference in speed, and there's 230 cars on the track, and you're passing 50, 60 cars a lap. It's unbelievable how much fun it is. It's complete craziness.
Mike mentioned some great memories of racetracks you've been to. There's an almost at Le Mans with Andrea Robertson and her husband. We can talk about that, maybe how that didn't play out. Is Le Mans still a bucket list thing for you?
Well, I went to Le Mans the first time was in 94 with Callaway. I put it on the pole. It looked like we were going to win, but less than halfway through the race, we had a French driver in the car that didn't hear pit in 2 times and ran out of gas. So we got disqualified, and that was it. It was really fun. But then, I met the Robertsons and did a few races. David Murray got me in to run with them. And I ran, Sebring and another race. And we were going to go to Le Mans, but they only got 1 entry. So I got kicked out. But they were super nice people, and it was a lot of fun. But after going to Nürburgring and Bathurst, Le Mans is kind of boring, to be honest with you. It's a big track. It's all straightaways. There's only 48 cars on there. Nürburgring is the ultimate spectacle in motorsports. It is the craziest thing ever. And I think the second craziest race would be Bathurst 1000. Those V8 supercar guys are wide open. They're nuts. They're 10/10s every single lap. You can watch that track on TV. But the first time I went there, it was with a buddy of mine. He landed a helicopter there. And I was like, are you kidding me? This is what they race on? It was so steep and so fast and so blind. TV doesn't do it justice. It's completely insane.
I've seen some video and it looked like Bathurst. I could be wrong. You're in a Mustang Fox body. It's full of smoke and your head is out the window because you can't see through the windshield.
No, that was actually at Sonoma early in my career.
Okay.
In the Bear Brothers Mustang. Yeah. When I went to Bathurst, I was in a pretty badass car.
All right, let's come back to Bathurst in a second, but tell me what it's like to unbuckle and stick your head out the window and continue at race speed.
Well, I mean, that was early in my career, and an oil line or something came off or something. I thought, and I go, man, I just got to get back to the pits, and I figured the only way I could do it is to unbuckle because I couldn't see anything in the car. That's when you're not really thinking about safety. Full speed, Joey Chintwood hanging out the window. Got it back, and unfortunately, it was the terminal oil line situation.
It looked horrible on video.
Yeah, it was as bad as it looked.
What else do you have to say about Bathurst? That looked incredible.
I mean, that V8 supercar is as professional as NASCAR Cup Series, but all road racers. Those guys are some of the best racers in the world, proven by McLaughlin, Ambrose, SVG coming over here. They breed some really good race car drivers there. So to be able to compete in that was a lot of fun, and got to do 4 V8 supercar races over my career. Once at Bathurst, Phillip Island, and then twice at Surfers Paradise. Great memories.
I have to say, it's really fun to see SVG in NASCAR kicking ass. It's really fun to watch him just jump in and get right up to speed.
That was the deal I put together for him, because Justin Marks, we met at BMW when he was this young kid that came over, and we raced together, and I kind of mentored him a little bit. I mean, back then he was this idiot kid, like, every 20-year-old kid. to see what he's become now in NASCAR is crazy because he's, in my opinion, he's the next Hendrick. He's the next Penske. He's that next generation of it's going to be the super teams in NASCAR. So I got a call from Paul Morris. And he goes, hey, man, can you do me a favor? Can you, Shane, can you get him a ride in that Justin Marks car? And I called Justin and asked him, and he goes, I don't know, I got a guy, I'm not really sure. And I go, Justin, I've raced with this guy. This guy could win. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
He goes, all right, I'll call him. And he never called him. So I called him back and really bugged him. I go, Justin, I'm telling you, this guy can win. And so they ended up putting a deal together. He goes, yeah, I'm going to put him in Chicago. It was the first time in my life I ever bet on a race, me and my son, because my son's a big gambler. We bet on him, and he paid off pretty good for us. It was pretty neat to see him win, and he's a great guy.
Do you think Shane's a road course guy or an oval guy? I mean, he's a road course racer, but, he seems to do quite well at the oval.
He's getting there. I mean, it's so much harder now because when I was doing NASCAR, you got 3 hours of practice before the race. And he's going there with 20 minutes of practice and qualifying. To learn the ovals, he's only really learning them when he gets in the race. And that's really hard. So I hope they give him a couple years, and I think he'll get it. I mean, he's one of the best drivers I've ever seen besides Connor Zillage, who I think is probably the world's best.
There's a bunch of Connors. Connor D. Felipe, I think you ran with him
Yeah.
in the BMWs.
Well, he ran in the prototype. I was way before him, but he was the second American to win Nürburgring. And he's good, but I'm telling you, Connor Zillage, if he went to Formula One, he would beat those guys. I've looked at his data. I've never seen a kid like this. He is head and shoulders above anyone I've ever seen or raced with. And he's a nice kid, one of the nicest kids you'd ever want to meet.
I want to get your thoughts on the state of sports car endurance racing today. We've got SRO, IMSA, WRL, AER, Champ Car, WC, even Lemons. SCCA is doing some, Trans Am is doing a little bit. Has it become accessible in a way that you've given any thought to?
I love how popular it is. I mean, to go to a 24-hour Daytona race now, WeatherTech, it's packed. Never had that kind of crowds. Cars are beautiful to look at, all the different GT3 cars, and they keep them pretty equal. Personally, I don't like racing those cars. I think it's taken a lot of the skill away, to have paddle shift and traction control and ABS braking. Took a lot of the skill away from shifting through a gated shifter, having to match the revs and use the clutch and not use the clutch. Trans Am now, the TA1 class, that's the best race car that anyone could ever drive. It's almost 900 horsepower. Some of them still have a gated shifter, no ABS, no traction control, requires a lot of finesse, a lot of control of the tires. And, they still go 194 miles an hour at Road America down the straightaway. I mean, they really go. But in saying that, I'm old school, so it's me saying, I'm riding my horse. These cars are stupid. So I get that. And these GT3 cars are just so cool looking. They have a lot more aero than the cars ever had. The technology is unbelievable. And they're beautiful looking cars, all of them. But I really don't enjoy driving them like I enjoy driving an older school car with a gated shifter and a lot of horsepower. I wish they had more horsepower. Even NASCAR now, they've dumbed them down so bad. They're only 700 plus horsepower. They used to be almost 900, and that was a lot harder to drive.
Mike brought up a really good point about all the different sports car and endurance series that exist, and I'm sure we missed a few, but there's also been a rise in vintage racing. Do you see yourself getting involved in that? Maybe something as outlandish as like the Le Mans Classic?
I still really enjoy driving. I mean, I did a NASCAR race last year. Was probably too old to do it, but I had a blast. And I still enjoy Trans Am. There's such good racing in all the series now. One thing, you look at real grassroots, Spec Miata. You go to an SCCA race at Road America, and you see 70 Spec Miatas driving around there, 4 cars bumper to bumper drafting.
Folding in each other's mirrors.
Yeah. Those guys put on the best show in racing, I think. They're really, really good. And it's amateur racing. There's so much good racing now in all the series. It's really cool now. You can turn on the TV, you can watch it anywhere. I still, after 39 years, I love watching racing. I love being around it. I have a really successful BMW dealership. Super proud of it, building it. But when I'm there, I personally don't feel like I belong there. Where if I'm at a go-kart track or an SCCA National or a Trans Am race, I feel like at home. I just still love the racetrack. I love car racing.
We may have breezed past it, but you are renowned for a number of things. One being the road track ringer.
I was doing some truck races, and then Jimmy Spencer had me sub for him in a cup race when he got hurt. Nobody knew who I was. Showed up at Watkins Glen, qualified 5th. And then in the race, he started the race. I got in, got all the way up to 12, spun out in a wreck, went all the way to the back, got all the way up to 12th again. I forget where I finished, but in the top 15 or something. So after that, I started getting calls, and the first person that called me was a guy named Eddie Wood, the Wood brothers. And they go, hey, you want to go teach my driver road racing to Elliott Sadler? And I'm like, well, I'm not really a teacher, Well, we're going to go up to Sears Point, it'd be really good. I go, well, I'm not really a teacher, but what are you thinking? He goes, well, I'm going to bring 2 cars up and do some lead follow. I go, so I get to drive a car? And he goes, yeah. I go, okay, I'm in. I get to go drive another cup car. I'm for sure I'm doing that. And so we finished the 2 days of testing, and it was fantastic, and they paid for my flight and a hotel and food and treated me like a king. It was great. And at the end of the second day, he goes, well, what do I owe you? And I go, well, I don't know. Do me a favor down the road. I'm good. You paid for all my expenses, and I had a blast driving. Oh, no, I got to pay you. What do you charge? And I go, just forget about it. And I went home, and that was it. 2 weeks later, I got a check in the mail. That was my biggest check in racing by far. And I remember just looking at it like, oh, my God, this is crazy. But what he did was he must have told everybody in the paddock, because after that, my phone just started ringing to go testing. And so I just became this test guy, testing for all the teams.
Are these NASCAR guys who want to learn road tracks?
All NASCAR guys, yeah. There was 30 of them, over a few years. So that just got me to be, every year when somebody got hurt or didn't want to race the road courses, they called me or Ron Fellows, and we became these road course ringers. It was an awesome, awesome experience. And I love racing. I love racers, and I learned so much by doing that. And it, got me faster along the way.
We're sort of jumping around, talking about trucks and NASCAR and road racing and everything in between, and jumping between all these different disciplines of motorsport. How were you able to adapt? Or was it just Boris's full send? We're going to go as fast as we can.
No, I did a lot of weekends. Like Automobile Magazine did an article on me once at Sonoma called The Hardest Working Man in Racing. At Sonoma, I would do all 3 races: the Cup race, the Southwest Tour race, and a Trans Am race. You're jumping back and forth. The race days weren't the hardest. The hardest was Friday, doing 2 practices in each car and then qualifying 2 cars. So you're jumping back and forth a lot. The hardest thing about that is, I used to explain it's like dating girls. Every girl is different, and you can't say the same thing to every girl to get the results you're looking for, right? So they have their own personality, and that's how cars are. When you sit in that car, it's like, am I in a batting cage or am I hitting golf balls at the driving range? Everything's different. So I was always good at just switching from one to another. And I don't know, I just had a knack for it. One year at Daytona 24 hours, I drove 4 different cars in the race. I drove 18 hours of the race. I drove Callaway C7 and GT1, and I drove 3 BMWs in the GT class, which one of them we won in. And at one point in the race, we were leading in both classes, but the Callaway expired about 2 a.m.
And I won't name names, but you hear things in even recent times of racing where pro drivers are struggling with their engineers, they're struggling with their crew chiefs to communicate how the car should be set up. Maybe they have braking problems, maybe they have steering problems, electrical problems, whatever. But now you're jumping between 3 different cars, 4 different cars. How are you able to translate your driving style, how you want the car to act, to 3 entirely different teams, engineers, to say, I want to steer off the rear end. I don't want it to push. I want it to drive like that. Had to have been a challenge to get those cars dialed in so that you could just jump between them and feel good about it.
It didn't really seem that big a deal to me. I mean, every car has its feeling. You're just like, all right, it's a little loose here, it's a little tight here. Most important thing is I need to make it turn better. And you pick something to make it turn better. Like, can you put a little bigger springs in the back in the Cup car? The sports cars are a lot more of a compromise. But it never, I don't know, for some reason I always had a knack at it. I had a really good butt with a good feeling, and I could translate what I was feeling to the guys. The years I did in NASCAR, testing all the cars and working with Penske, Childress, Hendrick, I knew what everybody had. I knew what they were doing. I had so much information. I was really good at knowing what the car needed in that era. Now the cars are so different, the way they run. It's a lot harder where they'll change a shim, a 16th shim in the shock will make a big difference. So, now what you would just tell it, feeling this, I needed to turn a little better in the center, and the engineers will come up with something. Where back then it was so easy to say, go up a 16th on the sway bar or put around a wedge in the right rear. It was really easy to relate what you needed. But now it's a lot more scientific, I think, and it's a lot smaller adjustments make a big change.
Talked a lot with Colin Brown's dad, Jeff, about his early involvement in damper testing and those minor adjustments that make a NASCAR car run better and a sports car run better. It's magic. It's complete science. And if your butt can tell your engineers what you need seems to be super important. And, it strikes me that that is what has led teams to say, yes, we would like you to come along to perfect these cars.
Well, Dale Jr., he was probably my closest friend in NASCAR. And I remember, I got a call, to go teach him road racing. Then I showed up at Sonoma. I walk up to the car early in the morning. Tony and Tony Uri Sr. are working on the car. And I'm like, hey, I'm Boris Said. I'm here to help you test. And it was kind of like Days of Thunder. They looked at me like I was poison, cold as could be. And I'm like, okay. And I just backed up and I'm standing around for about 45 minutes. And it's early in the morning, like 8 o'clock or 7:30. And I'm like, doesn't seem like they want me here. And then this engine guy came up from Childress, and I was good friends with him. And I'm like, hey, man, we're talking. I go, doesn't seem like they really want me there. I go, where's Junior anyway? I haven't even met him. He goes, oh, he's probably in the trailer sleeping. Go in the hauler and meet him. And, I had this preconceived notion that he's going to be this spoiled brat. I mean, he's Dale Earnhardt Sr.'s kid. He's got everything, right? Like this in my head. Sure enough, I open the door to the lounge and walk in. He's dead asleep and he wakes up. Man, I was 180 degrees off. He is the coolest dude. And we just hit it off. It was like we were brothers. He was like my little brother right away. Never had a little brother, but he would have been it. So the test starts going and he's running. He's like, well, let's put Boris in the car. So I get in the car and go quite a bit faster than him. And then I tell him their car's crap. I go, here's what you need to do. And they made some changes and it got faster. And now all of a sudden they're like, oh, buddy, you want to go to dinner with us tonight? Hey, let's go to dinner. They want to pull all the information out of your brain. And that started our relationship with Dale Jr.
You knew Dale Sr. too.
Yeah. So Dale Sr., I mean, everyone always asks me about what's your best racing story, and it's a Dale Sr. story. One day there was about 15 cars testing at Watkins Glen. And I was pretty fast. I was in a car Jimmy Spencer built, sponsored by Federated Auto Parts. So this is after I've helped Dale Jr. And, his dad, he would always come up to me. And he was the only guy I've ever met that I was starstruck, that I would just lock up. I couldn't say anything. He'd come up and he'd squeeze my neck. He always called me Said. He goes, hey, Said, man, my kids couldn't stop talking about you, man. Thanks for helping them out, man. I owe you one. I'm like, okay. And so that day, he walks down to the garage where we were, and I'm like, Dale's coming this way. He goes, hey, Said, man, come here. Will you help me out? I'm like, yeah. So we start walking towards his car, and he's got his hand on my neck, squeezing it. He always did that. He goes, yeah, just run like crap, man. This car just ain't, I don't think it's right. I tell them boys, but I don't know. I don't know what to tell them. He goes, will you drive my car? And I'm like, holy crap. I'm going to get to drive the number 3 car.
That's unusual for him.
And at the time, I didn't know only 3 people in history ever drove that number 3 car other than him. Jeff Green, Paul Newman, and Neil Bonnet. That was it.
Why was Paul Newman in that car?
Because they were friends and he took some laps at Daytona.
Okay.
So anyway, he goes, let's see if you fit in there. And I get in there and I'm sitting, my knees are in my chest and he sits leaning way back and kind of has his hands on the door sill. And he goes, man, Said, you don't fit very good in there. You think you can drive it? And I go, I know one thing. I feel like a bad motherfucker sitting in this thing. This is the coolest thing ever. He goes, can you drive it? I go, I'll drive it on one condition. I go, I know I'm the only race fan you ever let drive your car. I want to picture me driving this thing.
Oh, my God. That's fantastic.
And he goes, yeah, come on. So I go get my helmet on with my big Ford sticker, right here. And I pull out and I drive like 3 or 4 laps. And I come into the garages were real small at Watkins Glen. As I pull in, there must have been 30 people there taking pictures. It was crazy. And I was like thinking of that old E.F. Hunting commercial, where everyone just stopped to listen to what he said.
Yeah.
And as he took the window net down, I was just horrified looking at all these people. And he's like, well, like a deer at the headlights, I go, man, this thing's a piece of crap. If you drove my car, you wouldn't get in this thing. Right. And he goes, come on, let's go. And so me, him, and his crew chief, Kevin Hamlin, we go in the hauler. Now we're sitting in the Dale Senior's hauler. And I give him this laundry list. I go, the first thing is your brakes, man. It's like pushing concrete. You need a smaller master cylinder to get a little travel. He's like, man, I told them boys I wore my leg out at Sears Point, and they don't listen. And I'm thinking in my head, like, how do they not listen to him? He's the friggin' king. So I give him this list of 2nd and 3rd gear. Remember the front sway bar, the rear springs. And he just told his guy, he goes, okay, man, do it all. I'll be here. Call me when you're ready. And so now it's just me and him sitting there in the lounge looking at each other, and I'm sweating and I'm nervous, and I'm like, man, I'm thinking something cool to say. And Airplane 2, the movie, was on the TV, and I go, pretty funny movie, huh? And he goes, yeah, I like that guy. And he put his hand on the table, and he walked out of the lounge. And I'm like, oh, Jesus, that's the best you can come up with? And I was just so nervous. And all of a sudden he yells, he goes, hey, Said, you hungry? You want anything to eat? And I was just like, yeah, make me a peanut butter and jelly and cut the crust off and hurry it up. Just a joke. And nothing, not a sound. And I'm like, If there was a door in the front of that lounge, I would have took off. It seemed like an hour, but it was probably 2 minutes. He walks in with a peanut butter and jelly on a paper towel and a water. He goes, "Here you go, man." And I'm like, "Hey, you didn't cut the crust off." He goes, "No, man, it makes your hair curly. I don't want to ruin your look."
Did he make one for himself?
Yeah, he had one for himself too.
Oh, good.
And so we sat there and ate. And that was just the coolest thing ever. Then I finally could talk to him. I was like at ease.
Let's look at some data. Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty neat.
That's really cool. The variety of cars that you've done that in is insane. I mean, we're talking about trucks, cup cars, sports cars, the X Games in rally cars. Like, I want to hear a little bit about that.
I never said no to anything. You know, if it was front wheel, rear wheel, never tried it. You know, I did the X Games. You know, that weekend I was doing the Xfinity race in Montreal, you know, and they were doing a special test on like a dirt track, and I was missing that. So I literally, the first time I went to the X Games, I literally got one lap of practice. I literally left the Xfinity race in Montreal, got in a helicopter, flew to the airport, took a private plane to Chicago to get a commercial flight to LA just to make the X Games. They go, "Don't worry, you'll have plenty of practice in the morning." I'm like, "Okay." And sure enough, in the morning, the track was delayed, getting built and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, so I did the X Games, but I literally got one lap of practice and didn't do the best. But yeah, I lost by like a quarter of a car length. So I was bummed, but it was a lot of fun to do it.
To Travis or
Travis helped a lot, but if I bring a driver that's never been to a track, I can tell him about the track, but until he goes out and drives it, it's like teaching him Greek, you know, but once he drives it, I can say, okay, now in that corner, you know, if you turn in earlier, he'll get it. So that's how it was tough at the X Games to talk to Travis, because he helped me a lot there, and just say, like, how do I do this? And he kind of told me. I did my one lap, and I'm like, oh boy, it's going to be tough in the race. But it was a blast to do it.
that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I don't know how you choose between Sonoma and Daytona and the Ring. And if you have a favorite, I'd love to hear about it.
I have multiple favorites. I mean, the Ring by far is my favorite. To be the first American to win there was a big feather. And, you know, I'm a big World War II buff. To be standing on the, I remember this so distinctly, standing on the podium when we won and thinking, you know, 50 years earlier, Adolf Hitler, he'd be rolling over in his grave right now if he saw some tall kid from California with an afro winning on his track, because it was just by the Ardennes Forest where the Battle of the Bulge was fought. That to me was one of the highlights. And then, you know, second was just competing in Daytona 500. As where I started, you know, driving my car to the track, I just never, ever thought I would get there. And I think every time I lined up for a race there, I would just sit there and think like, man, only 43 people get to do this in the world. It was one of the most fun experiences you could ever think of. Even though people say drafting's boring, that place was a little crazy, and it was a lot of fun.
Getting back to the rivalries that you have a reputation for not taking any crap. We all get more mellow as we age, but I want to hear about how the whole Biffle thing has played out over the years.
Oh, man.
Do you still want to give Greg Biffle a black eye?
No. So, I mean, I did a lot of training with Greg Biffle, you know, because I did a lot of stuff with Roush. And that day, he made me super mad. And he remembers the story different. I remember the story different. So maybe the truth lies in between. But we were mad at each other probably for 3 years. I'll never forget it. I was at the SEMA show, and I saw him with a girl, and I saw the girl say, "Boris is here." Then he came, and we started talking, and now we're really good friends again. You know, we went on some off-roading trips together in Razors at the desert. He was a good guy. Just racing gets emotional. I was always a very emotional racer, and so was he. And that day, our emotions crossed.
You probably know Mike Skeen.
Oh, yeah.
His girlfriend, Kelly Heafy, slapped Max Pappas
That's
after
right.
the
Yeah.
truck race. And when Max took him out, and Kelly and Mike and I are really good friends, and she got famous from this.
Right.
It was a shame, but it wound up being pretty funny because they wound up on an airplane together, one seat away from each other.
Right.
Kelly and Mike go, "That's Max. Should we make friends?" And they decided that they should, which was the right move, I guess.
So my situation with Greg Biffle, what happened was when I got interviewed after, I had my son, who was probably 6 or 7 at the time, standing next to me. I'm holding his hand, but he's not in camera. I didn't want to just start swearing and bleeping in front of him. So my interview was this most ridiculous, funny thing, because I'm using all these words like wampum. And so the interview played everywhere. I had no idea how it went that viral. I mean, when I got to Australia that year to race, that's all they wanted to talk about, Greg Biffle.
Gosh.
Greg Biffle. And so it was funny. But in saying that about Mike Skeen, That's, to me, is a tragic story. That's the hardest thing about racing is, unlike other sports like golf, tennis, baseball, if you're good enough, you get your shot, right? I think Mike Skeen is the most underrated fast guy ever. I mean, that guy can get in anything and drive it. And his style is like as smooth as glass, how he's on a car. And I like feel for that guy because like I know he's better than I am. He just for some reason didn't get the right brakes. I mean, that guy should be in a NASCAR, or he's too tall for an Indy car, or he should be in a factory ride somewhere. I mean, the guy still to this day is fast as lightning.
Oh, he's amazing.
And he's the nicest guy. He's just quiet, and he just, man, I wish the guy would exert himself more because he is a hell of a racer.
He really is. I would like to ask you about characters in NASCAR. I think NASCAR has gotten sort of mellowed out by like the commercialism and all that. And, it used to be the guys who were running moonshine, and you were a character in NASCAR. Here we have this Cletus McFarlane guy coming into ARCA and shaking things up. I think NASCAR is recognizing it. From my perspective, it's really fun.
100% agree. I think NASCAR has become way too vanilla. All these young guys, I mean, granted, they're talented, but they're boring. Back in the day, I mean, you had Dale Earnhardt Sr. and Rusty Wallace and Mark Martin, and they all had these personalities, that were entertaining. And now, the most entertaining guy is Kyle Busch because I want to hear what he has to say. It's going to be big, but he's even mellowed out now in his old age.
Right.
It's still great racing. I miss the characters, and maybe it's because I'm old school. I'm 62 now. It could be that too. There's really good drivers now, and they're all young. But I agree with you. I think guys like him are going to have a big career just because he is entertaining.
Cletus and Biffle are very tight, which is fun to watch. And then he's got, is it Harvick as his spotter?
Ooh, I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either. But there's a lot of guys that have moved between NASCAR and the road courses and stuff like that. And Smoke and Dale Jr. And, Dale gets out at Talladega to give Cletus some coaching in a streetcar. And it's fun to watch. And the YouTube videos are off the charts.
I think that's what NASCAR is missing. But I thought Dale Earnhardt Jr., I mean, after knowing him all these years, that's why he was always the most popular driver. Kind of similar to Chase Elliott today. I mean, he's the same kind of character. Really, really good guy, top notch, because he was so genuine. Even if his name wasn't Dale Earnhardt Jr., he would have still been that guy. He's just such a cool dude. Everything he says is genuine. There's nothing made up with him. If he thinks it, he says it. I was always genuine. I said what I thought. A lot of times people did not like it, and maybe I should have shut my mouth. Just the way I am, and I can't change. Too old to change.
I've been thinking about this. With all of your expertise in various disciplines and all the time you spent in NASCAR, what was it like for you seeing the Garage 56 car at Le Mans 2 years ago?
I thought that was the coolest thing ever. It's just awesome. And then to see him win the pit stop competition was, I thought, one of the highlights of the weekend. And, everybody thought that car was going to be the slowest car in the field, and they ended up being faster than all the GT3 cars. So I thought that was a big win for Chevrolet. And I saw all the work that Hendrick Motorsports put into it, Chad Canales and his whole team, and it was pretty neat. I mean, I'm a partner of Rick Hendricks, and I'll call him a friend because he's definitely my mentor in the car business, and we talk a lot. I think they put a lot of effort into it and showed, Hendrick Motorsports, the organization is just ridiculous. It's top shelf. That's the pinnacle of motorsports, I think.
You think that car was a one and done, or are we going to see more of that kind of racing?
That's a one and done. That's a museum piece now.
You're not done. You started the go-kart franchise, but you were hanging up your old suits on the walls of these go-kart tracks?
Well, my wife was so mad because I used to keep one suit from every car I raced. And I probably had like 400 suits in the house, all stacked everywhere, and all these things. And they opened this indoor go-kart track by us in Carlsbad. I saw the sign, and it was off in this industrial park way in the back. I go, nobody's ever going to go there. They're never going to find this place. And I went in there and met the guy. It was a French guy named David Danglard and his girlfriend at the time. And we became friends, and they couldn't get the use permit. So I helped them with all the businesses in the area to, write letters of support, and they ended up opening. And I go, man, this place is never going to make it. So, they go, hey, can we get some suits? So I had to hang up some suits there and some memorabilia, and an old race car went in there, and the place just rocks. It was packed all the time. I became a partner in the second store.
Just for the benefit of our listeners who have probably been Googling this for the last couple of minutes, Boris helped put K1 Speed, that's right, folks, K1 Speed indoor go-kart tracks on the map back in 2003. So if you've ever been to one, you can say, I've been to Boris's place.
I didn't do much with the business, but they grew it from one store to two stores to three stores, and before long they had 60 of these things, and then I didn't have any more suits in the house, so my wife was really happy about that. Yeah, so it was a good place to throw all my memorabilia.
But then one day you got a call from Corvette Racing, and they said, jump in a car, like always. I think I have a Corvette suit hanging in a go-kart.
No, it was Lou Gelati. It was a privateer Corvette. And he goes, hey, do you want to do Long Beach with me? I'm like, yeah, sure. And then I go, hey, y'all, you want to take the team go-karting? We have a go-kart track in Torrance. Go, oh, yeah, that'd be great. So the night before practice, they're all go-karting. And the crew chief goes, hey, do you got a suit with the right patches? And I'm like, oh, IMSA. I'm like, shoot. Oh, yeah, there's a Corvette suit on the wall there that I was supposed to use with Dale Jr., but he caught on fire and I never used it. So I pulled that suit off the wall. And then 2 days later, it was in the same condition that Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s suit was in because, I had a big fire. That was a weird coincidence.
I have always regarded karting as the place to start off young road racers. Do you think that's still the goal, or would you go down, like you mentioned before, with your son? I put him in a Miata and we just went for it.
I think go-karting is the place to start, especially K1 Speed. You can start there very cheap and start indoor. And then now K1 has 2 outdoor tracks, one of the best circuits in North America by far, a go-karting facility, out here in Winchester, California. But, you look at kids like Connor Zillage and Brett Cruz, they all came from go-karting. You look at Formula One right now, Kimi Antonelli and all these young hotshots. They're all go-karters. So it's definitely the place to start if you can start that early. I never started go-karting until I became a car racer. I never did anything like that when I was a kid. But I think it's definitely the place to start.
I've only ever had one racing budget, and my kid goes to the go-kart track as often as possible and gets fast time of the week. I just pretend that didn't happen because I only have one racing budget. But what's next? Maybe some GT3 stuff in SRO. I have a team that would love to welcome you.
Well, it's good now because I'm a bronze driver.
That's kind of perfect. Yeah, it works into the strategy.
And I like it. I like doing Trans Am. I'm going to do a few more Trans Am races this year. I'm working on building a racetrack in Southern California right now and start like a country club track very close to LA. So it would be definitely different. That's the big project I'm working on right now.
I just invited you to come drive for an SRO IMSA team that I do not own, but that I sort of manage.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that invite, I can execute on it, but I do own a Lemons team. And if you were ever interested in driving in the 24 hours of Lemons, I have a shitty old BMW that I could completely put you behind the wheel of. And I've done it with other famous older race car drivers, including Randy Lanier, who Eric and I interviewed, and the invitation is open.
Yeah, I would do that for sure. SRO. Don't need any money anymore to race. I just do it for the love of the game now. But yeah, I still go all right for a bronze guy.
I would love to see a rematch between Boris and Andy. And we talked a lot about the past, and now Mike has brought us into the future. But there's one thing that we sort of left on the table from your origin story. You said you wanted to buy a Formula One car. Did you ever do any open wheel racing? Did you ever get a chance to sit in a Formula One car or even an Indy car and run some laps?
Let's assume that he bought one.
I wasn't going to ask.
No, I never bought one. In racing, driving other people's stuff's a lot more fun. So I never owned any race cars.
I agree completely. Yeah.
But one time I was doing World Challenge in probably 1990 at Des Moines. Super V was racing there. SCCA Super V racing, the Pro Series. And I was walking through looking at the cars. Some guy stopped me, and he was a New Zealander guy, and Ken Murillo ran for him. And he goes, how come you never tried any open wheel cars, Boris? And I'm like, oh, no one's ever asked. He goes, well, you come out and test my car sometime. I'm like, when? And I remember, I kept bugging the guy, and I went to Willow Springs. I was living in Connecticut at the time. He tested me in a Super V, and it was Chad McQueen's car.
Steve's son, yeah.
I ended up being really fast. And he goes, okay, I'm going to sign you as my driver for next year. And I thought, well, I got a ride. Sure enough, a month before the season, he goes, I'm sorry, mate. I got to take somebody that's paying. And I'm like, okay. So that was the only time in an open wheel car. But I didn't really fit. Open wheel, and even running the prototype cars, the little as I did a few years, I was too tall in the legs for those cars. It was just hard to be comfortable in them.
It's a real shame. The more I think about it, they did the wrong casting call for the U.S. Top Gear. I think Boris should have been on the U.S. Top Gear, and that show would have survived.
I tried out for it, actually. I didn't get it, but I did try out for it. Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's crazy, because a couple of the rally guys that I'm friends with got it, whatever. Like
Tanner.
Yeah, Tanner.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's frustrating.
You mentioned earlier, we've hit on it a couple times. You're now racing with your son, who, like you, kind of had to be brought into racing a little bit. So that means the Said legacy lives on in motorsport. What's the family goal there? I mean, obviously, you're still turning laps as well. What's the plan for your son and maybe grandson, future generations?
Let's not talk about a grandson just yet, big fella. But even though he's going out with Davy Jones's daughter, which is pretty neat. She's a super nice girl, Carrera Jones. He loves it, but my son has his own business. He's more successful than I am, and he's doing really well. And I think he's torn right now between his 70 hours a week, that he works. Is it working or racing? And right now he's doing both. But I love doing the racing with him because we do it together and, we're best buddies. But I'm not sure if that'll be his career. I think business is going to be his career. And I'm super proud of what he's done in that. I mean, he's 21 years old and it's amazing what he's accomplished.
Well, Boris, we have reached that part of the episode where I like to invite our guests to share any shout outs, thank yous, promotions, or anything else that we haven't covered thus far.
No, I'm good. Thanks. After 39 years of racing, I just still love it. So I like being around it, like talking about it. It was a hell of a ride for me.
You don't have a website where you're selling t-shirts or something?
No, I've never had any of that stuff.
Okay, cool.
If any of your fans need a BMW, they can come to BMW Murrieta. How about that?
I need one. I would like an M340i.
That's a great car.
For something less than 80 grand.
It is less than 80 grand.
Well, then we're in luck. I'll be out.
Okay.
All right.
No problem.
Well, folks, that brings us to the checkered flag on this episode, and it's been an absolute ride talking about the legendary career of Boris Said, a driver who's raced it all, won big, and never backed down from a challenge. From road courses to stock cars, Boris has left his mark on every track he's touched, and his passion for racing continues to inspire fans and drivers alike. If you want to keep up with Boris and all the cool things he's still up to on and off the track, you can follow him on Instagram and Twitter at Boris Said. So whether it's racing, mentoring, or making appearances at events around the country, Boris is still very much part of the motorsports world.
Great talking to you, man.
All right, take care.
We hope you enjoyed another awesome episode of Break Fix Podcast, brought to you by Grand Touring Motorsports. If you'd like to be a guest on the show or get involved, be sure to follow us on all social media platforms at Grand Touring Motorsports. And if you'd like to learn more about the content of this episode, be sure to check out the follow-on article at gtmotorsports.org. We remain a commercial-free and no annual fees organization through our sponsors, but also through the generous support of our fans, families, and friends through Patreon. For as little as $2.50 a month, you can get access to more behind-the-scenes action, additional pit stop minisodes, and other VIP goodies, as well as keeping our team of creators fed on their strict diet of Fig Newtons, gummy bears, and Monster. So consider signing up for Patreon today at www.patreon.com/GT Motorsports. And remember, without you, none of this would be possible.